Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar. No, and I'm Mon. I'm part of the team of technical course creator for Asia Open Run Academy, and our topic for today would be intro to cloud and edge computing, and some of which was covered by the previous speaker this morning. No, but we'll uh, go and discuss some other details. No, and as mentioned on the intro, I'm mainly a security guy. And as with traditional technologies, now everyone, especially in the security business, would have to adapt to cloud and edge computing. And we'll discuss some scenarios and incidents that I've dealt in the past, and maybe demystify some other misconceptions about cloud, especially with security. So some topics, of course, cloud computing, discussions about security. Then we'll go with edge computing, and there are similarities, no, yung cloud versus edge similarities, and then of course the differences there. Okay, and some references too. Of course, that. So first, what is cloud computing? No, so we all see, and I've seen this meme, no? The cloud. Or simply put, it's someone else's data center, or someone else's computer, basically. And if you go back to sa history ng computing, no, so the early days natin is we do have centralized application running on one isolated computer, and then we have terminals, no, to access it. Ito yung mga mainframe era, and some of us might have seen this. Ako sa history books na lang, no. Nabuhay ako sa computing, nandun na sa personal computing era. This was sa 80s, 90s, no? Where vendors started realizing na they could minimize yung footprint ng mga computing devices, and basically the goal was to have a personal computing device for every home. Okay, which was achieved, fortunately, no? And this became some sort of a decentralized processing. So now we have computers powerful enough and small enough at that time, no, to be brought at home, and then you could run your applications locally, no? And some output is going to be brought to the office, then basically loaded sa mga mainframe pa rin, no? So to a degree, it was decentralized. And then came some interest in virtualization. Though note, virtualization wasn't a new thing, no? It's not a 90s, 2000s technology. I mean, even with the early days of computing, we already are dabbling with virtualization. But with a lot of computers that is decentralized now, where you need to be able to process data and send it to a central location for whole-scale processing. And the connectivity that was booming at that time, nagkaroon ng interest with cloud computing. So at that time now, parang they were now trying to centralize application, no? Kasi now we have connectivity to support it. Okay? So then after the era of centralization and cloud computing, now we have a new buzzword to a degree. Well, I won't call it buzzword, no, but it's a new paradigm, no? Edge computing, wherein we would, aside when we went to cloud computing to centralize all these systems again, you realize na merong mga shortfalls si cloud computing. So it's not a silver bullet to solve all applications, all systems, no, that would fit. Cloud computing won't fit for everyone. So they realized na, okay, we need something to augment that. Okay, hence edge computing was born. And now yung centralized application, to a degree, no, binaklas siya, tas nilapit siya sa users. Okay, and this became basically complementary technology to cloud computing. So if you could see yung history, no, so from centralized, decentralized, then ginawa nating centralized ulit via cloud computing, and now we're trying to decentralize it again. But yung computing power is now basically, I would say, distributed between centralized and decentralized now, which would be very really complementary for both technology. Now for cloud computing, if you go with public cloud, there's I would say three major players. No? So we have AWS, of course, number one. We got Azure, Microsoft, and we have GCP from Google. No? And based on last year's Magic Quadrant, so sila pa rin yung leaders, no? And visionaries in cloud computing. And we have some runner-ups. No? So we got Tencent, IBM, Huawei, Alibaba, and Oracle dun sa lower portion ng Gartner Magic Quadrant. And interesting here is humahabol sila to a degree, but of course merong first mover advantage yung tatlo, no? Especially AWS, since they are sa leaders Magic Quadrant. And if you see yung $200 billion no, cloud market last Q2 2022, AWS still is leading, no, 34%. As compared to Azure, yung next niya is 21%. Okay. And then we have Google Cloud running third, no, at 10%. And again, main kay AWS was they had a lot of technologies. They have a lot of technologies for that matter that's being used by a lot of people and organizations. Azure, a lot of their users came from yung mga naka-on-prem na Microsoft systems and Active Directory. No? They are now trying to migrate to the cloud. Hence, since Microsoft being the OS of choice across enterprises around the world, doon nila nakuha yung a lot of their customers. No? Google, a lot of this one I would say come from yung mga computing platform nila, no? But would say then most of us would have used Google doon sa search engine nila and email. And to a degree, no, yung Gmail is software as a service and it's technically part of Google Cloud. And of course, we have yung mga runner-ups, no, that has been constantly increasing din yung market share nila. But yet to see if they would be able to beat AWS at some point. Okay. So with cloud computing, no, we have various categories. No? Cloud computing started, I would say, on late 90s to early 2000, with virtualization being now accessible to a lot of organizations. Kasi dati mga mainframes lang meron. But with the advent of virtualization of personal computing and server environment, I started seeing private cloud. So you could host your own cloud. It depends on your case. It's not technically advisable for most use cases. You need to be able to define why you would need a private cloud, because you would be maintaining yung hardware, yung software, and integrating these technologies. Do you have the skills? Do you have the hardware? Do you have the location? Especially sa Philippines, now we have bandwidth issues before, and even now to a degree. And last a few days ago, no, power interruptions naman. If you're in Makati, a few days ago, nagkaroon ng brownout, blackout, outage. I've seen some of my friends very sweaty when you ask, well, nasa 20th floor ako mo, tapos hindi umaandar yung elevator namin. So that's gonna be a problem with private cloud if you host it. No? Do you have the power, no, in case magkaroon ng outage to sustain yung operation, no? And on top of that, no, with the pandemic, ordering hardware, not sure if any one of you is dealing with purchasing. I've seen equipment that has a lead time of 180 days. At made-delay pa, no? So kahit may pera ka, kahit doblehin mo yung bayad mo, walang hardware na mapapadala sa iyo instantly, no? So that was also, I saw a lot of organization that had server issues during the pandemic, na kahit may gusto silang bilhin equipment to augment their infrastructure, they cannot do it. Hindi aabot dun sa time frame that they needed it. So there's also a lot of shift to the public cloud. So public cloud, this one is pay as you go. May reserve instances then wherein you could prepay for a cheaper price on whatever you need. I would say, instant. As long as you have your billing, you have your card, sign up, instantiate your server, you could get your computing needs, no? And a lot of the components would be handled, no, yung security wise, no, and management and maintenance and upgrade is handled by the provider. But there are delineation on ano yung kanilang responsibility. Hence, one of the misconceptions with cloud is just deploy your application, bahala na yung cloud to secure it. So we'll discuss sa cloud computing security some of those pitfalls. No? So there's a thing called shared responsibility model, which we'll discuss in samples, no, in AWS and Azure in a bit. Now, other technologies or other organizations, no, cannot just be pure private cloud kasi may availability issues, and they cannot go full public cloud. Maybe merong data sovereignty issues, no, like for government data. So there is a thing called hybrid cloud where you could mix, no, both public and private cloud, where maybe for most of your workloads you could run it on public cloud, okay, but on some instances na baka may regulatory compliance or just some data na I'm not really comfortable to process outside, no, of my jurisdiction or my control, then maybe I could host it on my private cloud. So you would also be designing, no, or architecting ano ba yung tamang approach based on my regulatory requirement or yung actual system requirement. So siguro sample nito would be, let's say, on the banking industry, no? They still have some hesitation to process their data in the cloud. But they have some systems, no? Yung mga retention plans nila, brochureware websites, they're already hosted in the cloud. And I've also seen some banks employ technologies like Cloudflare, no, for their web application security and distributed denial of service solution, no? But that is technically hosted in the cloud, and all your data is, diba, kung gagawin mo siya way to protect your online and mobile banking, and you have to pass as a client, no, access ka ng online mobile banking, it's gonna pass through Cloudflare. Cloudflare is gonna decrypt and analyze those data and then send it back to the on-prem server ng mga banks, no? So would that be technically processing client data in the cloud, no? So they don't realize it, but they're actually there. So paano ngayon yun? You're not storing it, no, to a degree, but you are processing those financial records, no, in the cloud, even just using Cloudflare. Kasi Cloudflare needs to decrypt those data in order to analyze if it's attack traffic or not. So we've discussed this on the previous talk now, yung major cloud computing services like infrastructure as service and platform as a service, wherein yung management of the hardware, the OS, typically it's already passed on to the vendor, no? But if you're managing basically a system like infrastructure as service, sometimes you would still be the one responsible to patch yung operating system, update yung mga Apache web servers mo, yung mga databases mo. It's pag infrastructure as service, no, it's as raw as you could get. It's para nag-instantiate ka lang ng server, but that's still your responsibility. So if it gets compromised, chances are it's an issue with misconfiguration or patching issue with the user. It's not with the cloud provider kasi they provided you with the server. For the most part, yung mga instances nowadays, no, it's minimalist and secure by default. It's the users that's not aware that's opening up services, defining very lax security group that opens up these instances to attack, and they would have I would say realization, no, na hindi pala lahat sagot ng cloud vendor, no. You would still, especially for infrastructure service, no, a lot of responsibility to manage and fix, no. So if that's the case, some of them would move to a system like software as a service, wherein ito is yung patching ng OS, hindi mo napaproblemahin yan. It's up to the vendor. patching of the software, it's most likely gonna be on the vendor din kasi it's software as a service nga. So, but you still have a responsibility to manage yung accounts management, disabling of accounts if hindi na ginagamit, yung password complexity that's still on you. Let's say example, Gmail, no? That's or Azure Office 365. That's one of the major software service system, or you could even include Salesforce. And if a user, let's say your organization is using Azure or sorry, Office 365 or Gmail, and a user gets phished and pinrovide niya yung username and password niya dun sa threat actor, hence naka-login siya dun sa account and they got compromised. That falls within the responsibility of the organization by educating your user not to click on the link, submit your credentials if mukhang suspicious, and in case you did submit, di ba, you should have a policy and procedure in place for that user to report that incident para ma-remediate agad and ma-kick out agad yung threat actor on his inbox. So again, it's not foolproof na I'm using Gmail, it's gonna be secure. I'm using Office 365 for our email system, it's gonna be secure. May mga ano pa rin, may mga breaches pa rin na nangyayari with those kinds of platform. Some mitigations, of course, would be turn on MFA, and it's there by default, but no one's using it because bina natin na medyo hassle for most users, no? So they don't want that. They just want username and password to gain access to the service, and that would mean threat actors would just need, of course, username and password to gain access dun sa inbox ng mga users, no? So again, there would be what we call shared responsibility model, and one thing that you would realize now if you're trying to migrate to the cloud at some point is hindi siya pwedeng create, no, and move and deploy sa cloud. That's gonna be disaster. Initially, maybe you could do it, but if your system and application is not architected for the cloud, you're missing out a lot of features. And if you have a misconception that you have how do you call this? You have a system na deploy mo na secure, and you are leaving it to the cloud for yung mga systems nila to secure that component, no? Without realizing na, uy, naka-infrastructure service pala yung ginamit namin. That we have to update yung OS, we have to update yung application, then you're in for a treat, no? You're gonna get compromised sooner or later. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. So yeah, going to security. We think cloud is secure for the most part, yes, but you need some assurance, no, and skill set to do it, no. And for some policies, no, in regards to cloud security and cloud deployment. So the ICT already has this cloud first policy being mandated across the government, wherein well, if you have to deploy something, do it in the cloud, of course, pending compliance to a lot of rules and regulation, no, like data sovereignty, security, data privacy, and this would basically need to be assessed, no, by your infrastructure architecture team, no, if they would comply on this. And pag sinabi naman cloud first policy, it doesn't mean AWS, it doesn't mean Azure, no, although yun yung mga big players, and Google, no. It could be cloud first private cloud. You could have a vendor set up one for you, but you would need to, of course, maintain it too. Now, for banking, we have AWS at least. Now, they are saying that they are compliant to BSP 982 memorandum. So you could do sa financial sector, no, they could start using cloud with of course they would still need to comply with yung mga privacy laws natin and other PSP regulation, no? So hindi pa rin sila full cloud, although I'm hearing some other banks na meron na mga cloud-based core banking, no, that they're allowed to use pending approval ni BSP. So there is really a shift to cloud computing, even in the highly secured financial sector. And um, there are compliance that let's say for example nito kay AWS, no, that they are referring to that they are compliant, like for they are accustomed to complying with Cloud Security Alliance, ISO 27001 for security, 27017, 27018, European GDPR, PCI DSS, and NSOC compliance, no. So this if you're thinking about security and compliance, no, and you're gonna architect a system that needs to be compliant with this one, for the most part major cloud providers are already compliant, no? So gagamitin mo na lang sila. One of the advantages din na instead of setting up your own architecture, hindi that you'll have to think about this, most of this, no. But again, misconception, if you use AWS, automatically compliant ka na. Maybe the infrastructure is compliant, no? But your software, your system na dinevelop to be deployed to that might not be, no? So you still have to follow the guidance ng compliance framework, no? And do note, you've seen this already in the past, no? Compliance does not necessarily mean security, no? You have a minimum viable security if you comply to this one. And we've seen a lot of organizations that supposedly complies to this one, and they are compliant, no, to the security and privacy frameworks, and they still get compromised. Why? I mean, pwedeng encrypted yung data address mo, data in transit, but one of your users were conned into giving out the username, the password, and the OTP. Again, kahit may MFA ka and it's OTP, it could still get compromised, no? One of misconceptions with the OTP is you're secure. And you've seen news in social media, in TVs wherein users losing their money in the bank, and the bank claiming that they won't pay because the user gave out the OTP. No, so sad story, but it does happen. And for cloud specific na security control framework, no, we had this as a reference, no, from CSA. It's a cloud control matrix. It's spread into 16 domains. It covers a lot of key aspects of cloud technology. And if you break this up, 16 domains, you will be given 133 control objectives. No, there's a lot of items na you could say na checklist. Yes, but now you are able to identify ano ba yung mga dapat kong gawin. It's not just as easy as sign up ako kay AWS and Azure, instantiate a server, deploy my app, make sure naka-HTTPS, that it's done. No, it's not as easy as that. No? So if you want to comply to a certain security control framework like CCM, you need to check this out to ensure security. And sa yung breakdown ng 16 domains niya, no? So you got this. Hindi ko na isa-isahin to, but let's pick a sample here, no? Like application and interface security. So could you assure, no, based sa CCM, that your application is secure? And if you break it down, are you conducting threat and vulnerability management to validate na kung yung application mo and interface is secure? Is everything being logged as appropriate? Kasi you can't have turned on debug logging naman. No? You're gonna overwhelm your data collection and storage. No? So you need to be able to find the sweet spot. What data is needed, what data could be logged, and ano yung I wouldn't say minimum. No? Ano yung mas appropriate data that I could log and process, so I could figure out, is this still a normal behavior? Is this still an attack at this point? No? So, a lot more. No? Again, breaking down into 16 controls here. So this is a good reference for cloud security for those of you attempting to lock down your environment. No? I mean, even just for a tabletop exercise. No? So get the copy of this one. If you have cloud systems, no, ibanggaan nyo sa application nyo and then check how compliant are we with a very basic cybersecurity framework for cloud, no, like the CCM. And you'll be surprised. Ang dami yung hindi nadaanan kasi all the time you thought Diba? I have an old application na legacy na on-prem, migrate it to the cloud, put a WAF in front of it, and it's done. Okay? I'm secure. Hindi na ako ma-hack. Um, do note, ang dami ko na nakita na yun yung mindset. They'll come back after a few months or years. No? They're gonna get compromised. No? So for the AWS, no, shared responsibility model, no? So depending on the application and the system na you subscribe to, some of it would be the responsibility of AWS. And if you check out here, no, parang 40% kay AWS but 60% nasa customer pa. But for AWS, they are dealing with the hardware and infrastructure and availability zones, including edge locations. The software for some of their services, no, like OS, it's their responsibility. Storage, database, and networking, it's on them. No, but if you go with, let's say, platform as a service, no, pati let's say OS is instantiated by you, like EC2 instance, no, that would be under your responsibility. And do note, pati firewall configuration, identity and access management, and of course, yung customer data, that is your responsibility. If you have a customer record and then you put it on your web server in AWS, and then for some reason that web application had exposed, no, customer records na kiklik mo lang da-download, no, kasi nagkaroon ng misconfiguration or bug in your system. I mean, you cannot blame AWS for not protecting your data kasi you coded your software that way, bug or otherwise. No? So it's on you. And again, if you look at yung delineation, no, kahit na visual na lang, no, not entirely accurate, but ito lang yung sagot ni AWS. That's just it. The rest is on you. And if you actually check out, naman, kung yung customer data mo, hindi ka kampante to ilagay dun sa system na even you decide. That's, step back and figure out. Kaya ba natin protektahan yung data on cloud or i-host natin locally? I mean, I wouldn't think that's a fair assumption, no? Kasi you get people on cloud migration discussion like email system, for example. They would say, hindi man, may data sovereignty issue kami, no? Mas gusto namin na yung email systems namin is within our control and within our data center. Rather than moving to email platforms like Office 365 and Gmail, no? But they do understand naman that they cannot beat yung spam filtering solutions of Microsoft and Gmail, no, na built-in sa software sa service platform nila. And the storage though, di ba? I mean, I've seen government agencies with an inbox na 100 meg na asar na asar yung mga employees kasi they cannot with the current size ng mga medias na ini-email, no, PDFs and otherwise, no, they're only even allowed to attach only 5 meg of file. So nagfa-fallback sila dun sa okay, gamitin nila yung Gmail solutions nila na personal, nila yung email document. So nawawala din yung security na feeling ng admin initially, controlled nila. Okay? But they cannot increase yung storage space. They cannot increase yung attachment size because limited yung budget nila for that. But if they move to the cloud, diba? They got the security, got the spam filtering solutions, they have the storage requirement, and they have the availability in favor of them. Now, if you do pros and cons, issue yung data sovereignty. But then again, if you went back to the example ko about, let's say, Cloudflare, no? Well, all data is actually processed to the cloud, then come to think of it, parang yun na yun eh. So, do we move or not to a cloud service? No? Azure has something similar, wherein ito mas defined, no? Alin ditong component yung medyo shared within the user and Azure, and then basically sabi nila pag on-prem ikaw lahat yung responsibility. Okay? Pero pag let's say you subscribe to an Azure compute node, no, na infrastructure as a service, well, at least the physical host, yung mga purchasing na 'to, yung mga power requirement, cooling requirement, hindi mo na iisipin yun 'no, it's already within, Azure's responsibility, 'no. But if you, let's say, subscribe to platform as a service 'no, nag-install ka na, sorry, meron kang mga OS and stuff 'no, it's shared responsibility, meaning, some component would still be managed by Azure, but let's say for, uh, yung mga operating system 'no, since this is platform as a service 'no, Azure na magma-manage for you. Okey, hindi mo na poproblemahin 'yan. Unlike 'pag nag-infrastructure as service ka, the OS, yung mga patching, testing, and maintenance, that's still gonna be on, the customer. So, ito yung medyo mas okey na delineation. So again, be careful on what you put to the cloud and ensure that you have the skills and capability to manage it. Very common misconception yan na, "I have an old system, I could migrate to the cloud, it's gonna be secure." It's not, okay? Sample of, cloud, security incidents 'no, this one, may isang company, si Codespaces 'no, that boasts of, proven backup plan 'no. So na-compromise yung, AWS admin account nila. I forgot kung na-phish or what, but it was, compromised, and that threat actor basically was, I think, ransoming them, and when they attempted to recover, ta's nagalit yung threat actor, the threat actor just wiped out all their, instances 'no. But this was 2014, so almost, a decade ago. Now meron mga controls si, AWS, like, yung instance cannot be deleted immediately 'no, so to counter this. But imagine the ano, the implication that some of, organizations, admin account on their cloud platform gets compromised 'no. I'll tell you a story, on some incidents na I've handled using cloud 'no. One is, let's say, yung isang incident na phishing 'no. So na-phish yung email ng isang user, and, kasi pinadala siya ng message, they did not send the malware 'no. Malware kasi it's gonna get detected easily with, our current, technologies of, anti-malware and EDRs. So what the threat actor did was they sent a convincing note that, you need to see this document with a link. And once the user click on the link, it's asking for a username and a password. And the moment the user click in the username and the password and submitted it, it asks for the OTP. Yes, this organization naka-OTP sila. But the user, believing yung, statement na yun, no, the user actually, submitted even the OTP. And you'll think that it's uncommon for users to submit the OTP, no? But the moment you were hooked to the message and you believe it, diba, chances are nasubmit mo na username password mo, so ba't mag-iisip ka pa sa OTP? So you're gonna send it. So this user was compromised, and what the threat actor did when we did the forensics was nagse-search siya dun sa inbox of, keywords, invoice, suppliers, payments, anything that would involve money, no? Tapos pag may nakita sila, or at this point may nakita silang isang email about a supplier payment, what they did was they created a look-alike domain, and then they hijack yung email thread. And now saying that urgently nagkaroon ng problem with their bank, they need to, replace it with, a new bank account, no? So, and medyo suspicious nung tinignan nung isang, finance guy yung email, parang, "Uy, diba, nagpapalit sila ng account, so suspicious 'to, tawagan natin." But they didn't realize na ibang tao na yung kausap nila. They just practically hijacked the entire email thread, and they have, the threat actor created a rule na if may email na manggagaling dito sa original supplier, no, put it on some, folder that's not gonna be easily seen nung user. So even yung notification sa phones, no, pag nagpapadala ng email, you're not gonna see it kasi naka-archive sa isang folder. Okay, but the threat actors could see it. And then, what the finance guy did was, okay, so tawagan natin yung supplier, no, to determine kung tama ba tong information na sinasabi nila na papalitan yung bank account. The problem was they used yung phone number doon sa email signature nung threat actor. Tinawagan na yung number, then may sumagot, of course, it's threat actor, and claiming, "Yeah, may issue kami, so, please do send kasi naubusan na kami ng funds for that." So they did send 40 million pesos. Okay. And then a week after, the original supplier was saying na, saan na yung bayad nyo? Tinawagan na sila. What bayad? Pinadala na namin yung 40 million. Diba? It's like, no. Pwede ba nagpalit kayo ng bank account? No, we did not. Holy, yun, biglang, it dawned on them. Then pag-check na sa email, doon lang nila na realize, no, that it was a lookalike domain. Okay? And na-compromise yung user nila because of that initial message, no, asking for them to view the document na humingi na username, password, and OTP. So, well, that email is hosted in the cloud. They still get compromised, naka-OTP pa yun. So, I would say more of user education yung issue that these things happen. They had this notion na pag naka-OTP kami, hindi kami na mahahack, no? But we all know it could still be breach if di bibigay ng user. So that's one. Another incident is with the feature of cloud computing of auto-scaling. No? Let's say meron kang 4 machines na naka-cluster, diba? On a slow day, yun lang yung box na yun. Let's say bigla ka may promo, let's say online shopping, e-commerce site ka, no, na, oy, ano bang, ano ngayon, 4-4, tapos na, 5-5, no, may, ano ka, monthly sale. Okay, and then your initial 4 compute nodes that could handle your regular transaction needed to scale to, let's say, 50, no, to handle all the requests, no. That's auto-scaling, yeah, in cloud computing. And you don't have to buy it kasi kung naka-on-prem ka, diba? And you're predicting that spike in user traffic para hindi mabwisit sa yung mga users mo, no? You'll provision your equipment na kaya i-handle yung peak traffic, which you're gonna use one day a month or 1 or 2 days a month, no? So hindi siya very efficient for your use. Hence, on this case, in favor si cloud computing. So on one incident that we've been asked to help, they have this auto-scaling. And they ask help kasi sinisingil sila ni AWS ng $100,000. Okay, so what happened was, naka-auto-scale yung system nila, hindi sila naglagay ng limit. Note that you could create a limit based on your observation. And they didn't set an alarm kasi you could also set an alarm if yung billing mo lumalaki na hindi expected. No? So what happened was, there was this threat actor na, I'm not sure kung intentional or otherwise, binombard niya yung site. I would say it's considered a denial of service, no? That conducted millions of requests per second. And pag tama sa load balancer, sabi ng load balancer, oy, 4 lang yung machine ko, tapos ang dami kong request na kailangan process, hindi kayang i-handle ng current system. No? So they spawned 500 instances on the backend. And that was on a Friday night. They realized it on a Monday. Pag bukas nila, bakit ang daming instances na naka-fire up, tapos yung bill nila sobrang laki na, hindi pa expected. So, again, would cloud computing security myth help you with that? Hindi. You did not design or secure your infrastructure. Or doon nga, hindi infrastructure, I would consider para yung system. Diba? If they set a limit, no, kung ano lang yung instances, ilang instances pwede, they would minimize the risk. And if they have an alarm on the cost, no? If nagra-ramp up na unexpectedly, at least someone who's gonna get an email and get notified na, oy, dude, nasa $20,000 na yung bill mo na expected mo at this time, 15,000 pa lang, then diba, they could have stopped it with minimal, less impact, no? But it did happen. So now they realize that naglagay sila ng mga limits and medyo nakatulog na silang gabi, but konti lang. On another instance, so last scenario for this one. So, we've helped a conglomerate naman. Ito is yung third-party provider nila ng cloud, no? As a service, no? So basically, they have this Azure instance, Azure Cloud, subscribe sila doon. And they hired a third-party provider that manages that Azure kasi they don't have the skills, but they don't want to maintain it. So they just said na, okay, kung marunong kayo mag-Azure, yun yung expertise nyo, might as well just pay you. That's the premise, no? So apparently this organization, supply chain compromise, no, may threat actor within their infrastructure and nakikita yung mga credentials nung admin, no, kasi third-party admin to manage their Azure. And we did find yung credentials nila sa dark web 6 months prior. So We told the conglomerate, pina-reset ng conglomerate yung password, but still, since sila yung admin, they exempted their admins from using MFA kasi they were supposedly one problem. They're also sharing that admin account across 6 users. So, yung investigation actually medyo hirap na to figure out sino sa anin na workstation yung na-compromise. But a few months after, the threat actor came back dun sa system, no? With just username and password kasi walang MFA and they did not limit yung login to, let's say, if Philippine company ka, no? You could restrict that login but why not geo-lock it to Philippines only, no? Para may one step yung threat actor na even if they have the username and the password, they would still need to be coming ideally from a Philippine network to be able to log in. So just one step, it's not silver bullet, but it could generate an alert that someone's logging in, let's say from Denmark, pero nasa Philippines naman kayo lahat, no? So that could have been a trigger, but they did not have that. Walang MFA, shared accounts, then walang geo-locking. So threat actor came in, they cannot log in dun sa server. Kudos to the third-party supplier because naka-lockdown. Yung account nila, it's not reused dun sa mga servers. So since the threat actor cannot log in, what they did was they used the resource. Meron yung organization. So they instantiated a lot of machine learning instance. That's one of the most expensive compute node that you could subscribe to AWS and Azure. These are compute instance with GPU na naka-attach. And machine learning, well, the objective is if you're gonna do data analytics and machine learning, you need a support of GPU para mas mabilis yung computation mo. No? So what happened was they used the admin account, no, to create all of these instances with GPU and they plug in a crypto coin miner, no. So they use that Azure nung conglomerate, no, to run crypto coin miner. Now, if you are a regular user and let's say you subscribe to $100,000 no, na compute with machine learning features, no. Let's say provide ka 100,000. If you do crypto mine it, siguro mga nasa 30% yung ROI mo, which is lugi, no. So instantiate ka ng 100,000, kikita ka ng 30,000 in crypto coins, no. So no one's gonna do that. No sane person is gonna do that. But if you're a threat actor and I'm able to charge that organization 100,000, no, tapos may kikita ako ng 30,000, kasi hindi ko naman binayad talaga, hindi ko naman pera yon, no. That's a good ROI for me. Username and password lang yung puhunan, no. So yun, now there's a dispute between the cloud provider and the conglomerate on who's gonna pay that 100,000 dollars, no. But yeah, that's what happened. And ano yung liability ng third party na nagma-manage ng cloud platform kasi well, credentials na na-compromise and they cannot even point sino user kasi they're sharing it across 6 users. So that's an issue. And so again, we're just trying to demystify na cloud is secure. It is secure if you make it so. Same with on-prem, no. But they do have a lot of secure by default at this day and age, no. Now you have to open it up and you have to make it sure na you understand ano yung mga tick box na kino-configure mo, anong type of exposure yung gagawin, no? So skills then yung requirement. Okay. So if you want to get your feet wet into cloud computing, no? So may mga features si GCP, AWS and Azure na you could check out and try. Yung reklamo ng iba daw, you call it, they need a credit card, no? So paano kung walang credit card? You could also use debit card. They're gonna charge you $1 to check lang kung valid yung card, and then of course ang habol nila is hindi mo papatayin yung instance and then they're gonna charge you and the secondary, no. But the primary is they would want you to use and feel yung power and I would say freedom, no, to a degree, no, na without any data center ka initially with just a credit card, you have your own compute power on the internet na publicly accessible. So sa AWS and well other cloud platforms like this one, they would give you 12 months free of compute instance. It's not a big one. It's a mini server, I would say. I think 2 GB yung before no na RAM with 512 na hard drive. I'm not sure of the specs now, no? But it's usable. No? You could host your content there. Meron kang public IP. You could experiment on web service. You could experiment on web application. The works. No? It's a running Linux or Windows instance, depende kung anong kailangan mo. If you're a student, no, wala kang of course debit card and credit card. No? If you have a recognized institutional email address, you could set up here, no, AWS Education. No? Again, it's free. And if you want to have some how-to, no, again, on the actual course, we're gonna set up a free tier for that. I would want them to use this link, no, so you could set up your own mini AWS, mini Azure, then maybe try to figure out the latency between these two cloud providers, diba? Ano yung mas usable sa akin? It's free, and you have 1 year of a public internet server. So I'm not sure how liberating is that, no, for especially for mga students or graduate pa lang that haven't experienced this. This could be a go-to platform for you. Okay. So next we have edge computing. Okay. Edge computing is basically a distributed computing platform, no? And this makes basically yung task, no, to process data and store information instantaneous, no, by bringing these computing systems na as close to the device as an application or component that collects or generates this data near sa location. And it also eases the burden on cloud computing kasi well they do realize that, and we should realize, even though feeling natin infinite yung cloud computing, no, na as long as may pera ka you could process it, sometimes it's gonna be cost prohibitive, no? And if not, may limit din naman of course yung silicon ng mga providers like AWS and Azure, but of course you give them money, all the more na they would provide it for you. But you need, when you architect your systems and infrastructure, no, depends on your use case, you would be considering edge computing at some point. So advantages nito would be, well, better control of data, di ba? You reduce the cost, provides faster insights and actions, no? As may example kanina sa video. Actually, I like the video ng previous speaker, no, with cloud and edge computing, that in 3 minutes, no, each na describe niya what it is. I'll give some more insights on those items. No? Anyway, so how is edge computing playing along, no, with cloud, no? And as mentioned, no, cloud is just someone else's computer na doon ka nag-run ng mga workloads mo. And with edge computing, we realize na for an entire architecture to be responsive, efficient, and cost-effective, no, maybe we could do some processing on the edge. Oops. And just have access or send this information to the cloud for maybe telemetry or storage or some other optimizations na lang. But a bulk of the work is now just processed dun sa edge computing devices. No? Like, so for example, here we have camera. So do we want, let's say for motion detection, no? Do we still want to stream all those data to the cloud? And have the cloud figure out na, uy, bigla nagkaroon ng change dito sa frame na to, dito sa frame na to, and then may alert, no? So, send natin yun. Well, that would work for maybe 2-3 camera system, maybe 4 camera system, no? But imagine you have full building CCTV operations with 200 cameras. Consideration, how much bandwidth would that entail, no, to pipe all those 200 video streams to the cloud? That's a lot. So, cost ng bandwidth. Paano naman yung latency? No? So, hindi ka makaka-react real time. That's gonna be an issue. Storage, no? All those data, well, ideally, you store it to a DVR, no? But some of these camera systems, no, pwede mo nang ibigay sa cloud. But again, efficiency-wise, what if you could have those camera process na, those stream, and determine sa simula pa lang na, okay, there was a frame change from frame 280 to 281, and based on the significant number of change, we could consider this as a significant motion. We could trigger an alarm. Kasi nakaset doon sa camera na yun na wala dapat movement on this area. If there is, we're gonna cause an alarm. So that's an example of a use case ng edge computing. And if you could provide some storage on those cameras, no, all the better, kasi now you don't have the need, no, to purchase a huge pipe of bandwidth to stream all this data to the cloud. And one thing na that a lot of cloud computing advocates in the early days, no, don't realize na they go to the organization na they move natin lahat sa cloud. Parang okay, mahal yung cost at that time, no? But yeah, may workload na pag hindi mo naman kailangan, you could reduce the instances. That's a cost saving. But how much now na kung lahat ng data mo is nasa cloud, and then you have, let's say, 1,000 workstations on-prem that needs to access that data, you need to have bandwidth to support that access. Eh kung ang bandwidth mo at that time, 10 Mbps lang, no? And having all those workstations access that data from the cloud, you are looking at a gigabit of bandwidth, depending on the use case, no, as an investment. So, nagmahal. And now you have to do cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis, no, na are we really gonna save money, or yung availability with an additional cost ng bandwidth and cloud is just gonna justify yung move na to, no? But for the most part, I've seen a lot of justification. They do not consider the bandwidth. And well, being in the Philippines, we have a very expensive per megabyte, no, cost, no, as compared to other countries. Now it's slowly getting there. But before, no, you've seen it. You've probably experienced it. Sobrang mahal ng bandwidth. And if they did not consider that cost, no, when justifying the move to the cloud, now they're gonna see, oh, ba't ang bagal ng access natin? Ba't laging puno yung internet pipe natin? So they would need to increase that, only realizing na, well, kasi wala na sa on-prem yung data. We need to send and retrieve all those data from the cloud. Hence, additional cost and capex, no, which or opex, which wasn't considered during the justification phase. So ngayon, kailangan natin ibalik ng konti. And this technology, okay, this one works. So this technology is actually based on the 1990s CDNs, no, content distribution network, to serve videos and other large data, no? And noong 2000s, no, this evolves yung mga CDNs natin to hosting apps on edge servers, to develop yung mga earliest form natin of edge computing, no? This is an example from hosting. Ang one of the largest, if not the largest, CDNs in the world right now is Akamai, no? And of course, we have Netflix, uses the same technology. And how they work, no? Imagine, no, if meron ka lang isang instance ni Netflix that hosts all those video, diba? Hindi siya scalable across the globe. Kasi the bandwidth of that country would be saturated going out and downloading all this video content for other users. So what Netflix did was, well, why not put an edge server with lots of storage on the telcos ng mga companies, no? That where our subscribers are. So what would happen is, let's say I want to stream mga uso ngayon na series, yung sikat Beef, no, in Netflix. Before they're actually released and they think na maraming manonood nito based on their predictions and data analytics, no, they're gonna precede that series, no, on a lot of edge servers across their environment, so that once a user, no, tries to access Beef from if I'm not mistaken, they're using AWS for their subscriber management, no, but that's very basic, very low computing requirement compared to yung mga data store nila for their movies. Once you say you access beef dun sa ano mo sa browsing catalog, your client or browser would be instructed by Netflix, no, okay, you are in Philippines, you are a Globe subscriber, ito yung URL for that video within Globe Network. So you don't have to download it from the main server, let's say in the US, which would consume high bandwidth, which gonna be high cost, no? Kasi tumatawid ka ng country network communication lines. Now you could retrieve it locally within the telco, which would mean lower latency, mas maganda yung quality na makukuha mo tsaka yung experience. Walang buffering masyado. Or at least walang buffering, no? Kasi you're practically retrieving it as if it's a local area network within the telco. No? So that's the preceded part. Kasi they predicted that movie. Paano kung gusto mo manood ng movie na luma, no? Na wala na sa cache servers or sa edge servers ni Netflix. So that part, it's depending on the algorithm. If mag-isa ka lang naman sa buong bansa na nanonood nung episode na yun, no? Chances are, diba, i-access mo siya directly, which is okay kasi that's part of the use case. No? But depending on the algorithm, na feeling nila, uy, may isa nag-download and mukhang may viral thing about that episode na luma or what. And they could predict that, and they should predict that. And now they're gonna proceed it to, let's say, magva-viral lang siya sa Philippines and Singapore, no? They would just stream that content basically sa edge servers na on those two locations, but they won't be seeding it across the globe kasi dito sa side lang natin nag-viral and may chance na may maraming manonood. So why not, 'di ba? Pre-populate it and expect yung users na i-access yun soon, no? Para mas maging efficient yung network. So that's basically how CDNs work. And to a point, no, let's say you are updating, no, yung mga Macs mo, Mac OS, yung mga iPhones mo, even Microsoft, no. We would think na kay Microsoft nanggagaling lahat ng data na yon, but they're not, no. They're using Akamai na mga content delivery network to deliver those large amount of update packages. So they don't have to worry about it. I mean, Microsoft and Apple, no, being a large company themselves, so they don't want to worry about it. They just outsource yung CDNs to providers like Akamai para, okay, may update si Apple, ito yung IPSW file for your iPhone, seed it there, it's gonna be populated sa mga edge servers ni Akamai. Once the user starts receiving those notifications, pag click nila download this update, they're gonna be redirected to a CDN. They're not gonna access Apple directly for, let's say, an iPhone update. And you could say na, paano yan, third party, so how's the security of the package? That's where mga digital signatures comes into play. No? So that package is signed, and your phone validates if the hash and the digital signature is as expected before they even install it. So no one could just modify that sa CDN, install a Trojan horse or a backdoor, no, and then seed it to multiple client device, tas install nila blindly. So that rarely happens now with current software updates, no. But that solves yung content security part. So funny thing though, as we've seen doon sa history kanina, no? So initially parang hindi mo na kailangan ng local server, no? Kasi kailangan na may cloud na. So put everything to the cloud, and then as mentioned, no, na-realize nila yung shortcomings and pitfalls of the cloud, and of course bandwidth and latency requirement. We are now doing as of this time edge computing. Meron ka ng edge server that basically complements the cloud. So basically nagiging decentralized ulit. I like this graphics. Nung nakita ko to sa isang stream, parang lalagay ko to sa slide for edge computing. So why edge computing is, of course, we want data, no, na endpoints na nag-generate ng data to be able to process this, but any data that is complementary or needed ng whole system, no, like telemetry or some information na kailangan i-process para i-feed sa lahat, no, gonna be sent to the central location, where additional crunching pero now mas holistic yung view. Kasi pag sa edge computing kadalasan it's one small geographical area or one device yung monitor and manage niya, no? But you could have this data na mas maliit, like telemetry data or whatever, no? Na you could send dun sa main central compute platform, which is typically in the cloud. And now you have an holistic view on what's happening in your entire infrastructure. So, this becomes a problem, no? Pag marami ka ng device na kinoconnect. Again, if everyone is sending data, like yung example natin kanina sa CCTV, where you now have scalability issue, you have volume ng data, and then latency. Kasi again, with cloud computing, and especially with the Philippine context, no, latency to cloud environment is high. Kasi, well, it has to pass through intercontinental na fiber optic. Na it is fast, speed of light, but we all know from physics na speed of light still is finite, no? May distance and time na tina-travel pa rin yan. And it translates to latency. And if you want a low latency application, no, like let's say, we do have self-driving cars, no, but medyo malayo pa siya dun sa final objective, even with the sensors and everything. So the joke nga is, diba, yung ultimate test ng self-driving car is if makaka-drive siya sa EDSA, no, nang walang bangga. Yun, medyo papasaya, but I doubt. Sobrang unpredictable ng mga drivers natin, yung mga lane markings natin is not up to international standards, so they won't be able to see it. So if you can't have self-driving cars, there are use cases that I saw na may remote driving operator for let's say mga mining trucks, no, kasi high risk environment yun, and even then, no, walang mga markets yung dadaanan nila. But if you have a very good low latency high capacity network like 5G, let's say also using Open RAN, you would be able now to have your driver sit somewhere safe on an air-conditioned room na meron siyang catered food na dadalhin sa kanya, no? But they could now drive yung mga mining trucks na malalaki remotely, no? And where the compute component comes into play is, well, let's say nagkaroon ng jitter or disconnection issue, no? So yung mga safety mechanisms nun, that edge computing node on that truck should be able to compensate yung minor disconnections or maybe even shutdown, no, for safety reasons yung driving ng truck, no? That's not ideal. Let's say sa EDSA ka nagda-drive, biglang nagkaroon ng network connectivity issue, no? Tapos biglang i-stop may isang malaking truck, no? So that's not an ideal scenario. But again, you have to think and design and do the cost-benefit analysis. Saan ba usable to sa mga use cases natin? So that's one thing. So similarities between edge and cloud, well, you've seen futuristic use cases na to, no? Like autonomous vehicles, no, na hybrid. Na hindi siya full autonomous, for some scenarios na pwede siyang remote driving that could be autonomous if nagkaroon ng disconnection, or parang autopilot ng eroplano, no, wherein, diba, as long as na-take off na nung piloto, no, and all the parameters are set for the destination, kikiin lang nila yung mga data na yon, or even sometimes automated na yun, no? Set it, then autopilot the next time na if may emergency or ilaland na yung eroplano. That's where they take the control back, no? And you are wanting, no, for futuristic use case na to is real-time responsiveness, and then may central location ka for massive scale na data analytics. Again, do the computation sa edge, send the telemetry data sa cloud, crunch it there, and you get best of both worlds. Yung amount of data being generated, no, as mentioned in the example natin sa CCTV, you cannot just transmit 200 cameras to the cloud. Well, you could if you have a lot of money, but that's not very cost efficient, no? So again, yung security, latency, responsiveness na to, it's best to put it on the edge and then send telemetry data up to the cloud, no? So accessible automations now, telecoms natin are already implementing network automation on the edge, no? So let's say we've seen in Open RAN na if, let's say, one cell site is put out of action, no, by some reason, nakidlatan, naputol yung fiber, no, the other systems would detect it, and they would sometimes meron sila mga auto calibrating antennas, no, they could redirect that to the location kung saan, kung malalapit ka doon within the area. No? They could automatically detect the outage, redirect the antenna para magkakaroon ng degraded signal doon sa areas na may current operational cell sites. Degraded but they could still service yung isang area na nawalan ng cell site. No? So that means may connectivity pa rin sila although degraded. But that's better than having a huge, hindi man huge, no? A certain point in the city na walang full connectivity kasi wala na yung cell site na nagka-service sa kanila. So they could move basically na may mga motor systems na would recalibrate the antenna and beam it doon sa outage na area. It's actually good. And AIs and machine learning inferencing, no, make this enterprise edge automation possible, no? And a lot more information na pwede mong i-process tapos how you call that? I-influence, no, yung mga cyber to physical systems natin, no? So that's in relation to sa futuristic use case. These are actually a great use case, no, for cloud and edge computing working hand in hand. You also, of course, would want to streamline analytics, no? This is edge basically would be processing some data, okay? But for big data analytics, send it to the cloud. Again, for holistic view on what's happening on the environment. And pag ganun, you could now crunch different data and use cases, no, on whatever information you need from yung central location, which is in the cloud, of all these devices and edge computing devices reporting to it. And at some point, if you could see na, okay, we're able to answer this question, but we need this. We formulated a new question na hindi kayang i-answer nitong data na to. Now, you could reconfigure your data and edge devices na to gather those information and then again send it to the cloud now para magkaroon ka ng enough data to process and answer a new set of questions na kailangan yung immediate answers, no? So it's reconfigurable, it's programmable, hence hindi ka limited na kung ano lang na design mo from the start din lang hanggang mamatay yung system. Again, you could use it and configure it as needed. For pricing models, we've seen this sa cloud wherein, di ba, pay as you need, no? Kung ano lang yung instantiate mo, that's the amount of money you're gonna pay yung providers. May konting discrepancy sa edge computing, no? Kasi for edge computing, you need hardware that's gonna be deployed on-prem. And usually may mga sensors and everything yan. But I think for the most use case nito, it's gonna be yung mga mobile phones and laptops natin. It's gonna do be the edge computing device, no? But for some deployments like IoTs, automation and robotics, no, you need hardware to do it. So there's gonna be some cost, no? And there's gonna be actually how we see it, mas mahal yung edge computing kasi hindi na siya on demand, no? You have to purchase equipment, deploy it, and may logistics ka doon, may maintenance and operations ka. So hindi na siya click and instantiate, no? And if you do comply again with or use mga third-party well-known vendors for cloud computing / edge computing, hassle-free na regulatory compliance mo kasi they would say that they are compliant to you've seen, no, CSA, ISO, GDPR, SOC. So at least the platform itself is already compliant. Now you just have to again, don't forget, although kiniklaim natin dito is hassle-free regulatory compliance, no, yung mga systems na dinevelop natin would still have to be assessed if they will be compliant to these regulatory requirements. Okay, so let's go now to differences, no, for the last part. So differences in cloud computing, if you have to simplify it enough, check where the computation is taking place, no? If the computation is taking place in the cloud, in AWS, EC2, well, that's basically cloud computing, no? But if a lot of the computation is taking place dun sa endpoint devices or near endpoint devices, then that's edge computing for you. So speed and agility in computing, no? lamang dito si edge computing, no? Kasi yung computational power mo is as close to the data source as possible. Yung responsiveness of reacting, no, to specific inputs na binigay sa edge computing is gonna be near real time, no? Instantaneous. And with cloud, no, speed of deployment, yes, you have it, but speed of processing, while you have a lot of computing power to support your need, no, yung drawback nito is latency. If let's say on an industrial control system, no, meron kang steam pipe that has to be on the vicinity of, let's say, 2,000 degrees, no, sabihin natin, ay yung kaya niya. And then umabot ka sa point na nag 2,300, 2,400, way above yung threshold niya, no? If you rely sa cloud computing alone, na nakita mo yung telemetry data, papadala sa cloud computing master platform, okay, that millisecond difference, no, na hindi nakapag-decide yung control system on what to do kasi tinatanong pa niya yung master controller niya kung ano ba gagawin ko? Shutdown ko na ako? Hindi. That could be a catastrophic decision na na-delay, no? But if you put an edge computing node on that area na nakita na niya na, uy, ito yung threshold na pinrogram sa akin, yung input sa sensors ko is way above that threshold, I'm gonna shut it down to be able to react and hopefully makarecover yung buong system, no, at some point. So safety systems would need or best to have their compute as near dun sa sensor as possible so they could react appropriately and within the acceptable amount of time, no? Again, kasi kung nagde-decide pa yung cloud, no, and let's say nagkaroon ng outage at that time kasi sobrang init ng steam na melt pala, may fiber pala na dumaan somewhere tapos natunaw, no? So full disconnected yung system. Sino ngayon magde-decide on how to shut down that pipe? Hindi na makapag-communicate yung sensor, no, and control system. So if you have an edge computing device there, diba, it could do it on its own, no, to shut down that equipment. Oops. Sa productivity and performance, well, edge computing, resources are placed again close proximity dun sa mga end users and endpoint devices. It means that client data is processed using analytical tools and AI-powered solutions, no, within a few milliseconds, boosting up yung ating operational efficiency. We could think AI sa edge devices natin. Is it a real thing? No, we do have those kinds of computing powers na dun sa mga edge computing devices natin. Now with the cloud, no, you need to rack up and stack this environment, no, and basically set up the hardware, patch the software, maintain the data center, and then you now have to enhance, no, yung mga productivity ng mga and skill set ng IT personnel mo para makapag focus sila sa other high value tasks, and of course maintain the operational efficiency ng system, no? So you need to determine, diba, saan ba magandang computin tong data na to for performance considerations, no? So for edge devices, no, example nito is one of study kay Apple, no, machine learning.apple.com. They have this spec, no, comparing iPhone 10, which is 0.6 teraflops, no, doon sa 1, 2, 3, 4 generations away, times 26 yung speed. It's not times 4, no? It's times 26 sa iPhone 13 na Pro with A15. I think yung iPhone 14 or has around 10 to 15% improvement from this one. But this is yung neural engine peak throughput, no? So Apple neural engine peak throughput on how much data they could compute. Again, 15.8 teraflops. This is super computing level, no? 10, maybe 10, 15 years back, no? So it's now nandun sa natin to, sa packets natin. And currently yung mga ginagamitan nito is, let's say, for voice processing, no, for Siri, para ma-identify ng phone ano yung gusto mong gawin niya via voice. Previously, without this, your voice would have to be recorded, encoded, sent to the cloud, doon ipo-process for natural language processing and figure out ano yung gusto mong gawin, and then ibabalik sa phone. Oh, ito yung gusto niyang gawin. And to find out, oy, na-misheard pala ako kasi pangit yung audio, no? So, ang tagal ng processing, ang daming issues with advanced Apple's neural engine na they could process it dun sa device itself. Diba? Yung language processing is happening on the device, and then maybe some telemetry data na lang. Diba? So, minsan merong note doon if you have Google voice, or I don't think it's called Google Voice, no? But yung voice assistant ni Google and the Amazon and the Apple, which is Siri, they could compute it on the device, okay, and automatically i-perform yan. Tapos naglalagay lang sila ng mga additional data, no, para maging mas efficient yung computation as the research comes along. So again, 15.8 teraflops. Ito yung device last year, no, that you could process, no, within your device. This is edge computing, no, so to speak, na we are currently using at this day and age. One thing would be in difference is scalability, no. So pros and cons. Edge computing, meron ka ngayong heterogeneity issue ng mga device na i-deploy mo. Again, varying complex levels, battery life, energy usage, even temperatures, no? Sa environment, diba? Could your edge computing device operate sa Siberia, no? Which negative 100 degrees, not sure kung tama yun, no? But and then put it sa Sahara Desert na nagsi 60 degrees, no? Could it still work, or do you need different packaging and different systems, no, to be able to compensate dun sa environmental conditions? Kasi again, with the cloud, nasa data center sila, they have their clean power, good cooling system, mga hardware nila, they could easily refresh. But if you put it dun sa mga extreme environment scenarios, like I mentioned, it needs to be considered sa edge computing. And like sa Philippines, diba, is it weatherproof? Pwede mo ba ilagay sa labas? Or is gonna be housed sa bahay, but within the bahay, let's say malapit ka sa dagat, humidity is gonna be an issue. So all of this has to be considered sa edge computing, which you would typically not have that kind of an issue sa cloud computing. Kasi again, everything is controlled and easily managed in cloud computing. Downtime then sa edge computing, this your system should be able to compensate. If the device is out of connectivity or totally broke down, it should recalibrate. The system should recalibrate and be able to be up to speed kung ano nangyayari, or if talagang kailangan yung data on certain location, no, may tao kang pupunta to replace. That's not gonna be automated. Well, with drones coming into various use cases then in complementary with this one, baka meron ng pwedeng, diba, lagay mo sa drone, or maybe robot na magbibigay sa drone, yung drone magde-deliver sa location, tapos i-drop na lang yung sensors doon. Futuristic scenario na it is possible. But as of now, medyo Hollywood type yun. May mga tests for that, but we don't know what this hyper-converged and high-speed connectivity ng 5G and 6G would bring to us na soon, no? And so, speaking of scalability, no, sample natin dito, let's say, Apple AirTags, no? Used to be, if you want to track an item, no, maybe a car, you would place a device with good battery power source, no? Usually tatap mo sa battery ng kotse. Then you'll have a SIM card with a radio signal modem, maybe GPRS or SMS. And then you have a GPS antenna, no, and GPS chip. Okay, so what it does is that device would get the signal from the GPS, process it, determine anong location niya based sa radio signals ng GPS, and then periodically or otherwise, no, on demand, send that data out via SMS or mobile data, no, to a central location para matrack mo kung nasaan yung mga kotse mo ng fleet, let's say fleet tracking, no. So what happened here was, well, you got your edge devices, no, like an iPhone, which is, as you've seen, ang laki ng computing power. They've got good battery life now, especially yung mga high-end device nila. And well, for intensive purposes, no, mobile devices are a huge tracking device kasi you got multiple sensors, you got cameras, you got mics, You got about GPS, you got uh, maganda sensors sa phone. Light sensors, no, para i-on off niya yung display kung kakausap mo. We also have accelerometers, smart watches, di ba? Meron pa ngayong hindi man, blood heart rate, no, or blood oxygen level. And soon, supposedly, meron na raw sugar monitoring and blood pressure. I'm not sure how far we are on that level, but I would say maybe in the near future we would have that. And mabenta sa Pilipino yung sugar monitoring if ever they were able to do that without pinching yung nurse. But there's a lot of computing power you have, no? So in regards no sa tracking problem, no, again, this is the good part, no, not for stalking. What Apple did was, well, they designed, well, hindi man sila yung nauna, no? There are more companies like Tile that has this small device na you could battery powered, wala siyang GPS, it's just a Bluetooth low energy device that beacons out yung signal niya and serial number, no. And what's happening there is, if may Tile device ka, other phones need to have this application installed, tapos nagsisend siya ng Bluetooth and then send to a central location. Saan niya nakita ng device? Using the phone's GPS, approximate the location kung nasaan and anong time siya nakita yun. And now, with just eliminating, no, basically yung GPS, yung GPS radio, yung GSM radio, it's just now a battery-powered device that beacons out Bluetooth low energy serial number, so to speak. Every so often, they could last 2 years for that tracker. And what happened was Apple used all the Macs, all the iPads, all the phones na meron ng connectivity to begin with, that if they sense that signal, nakita, uy, Apple AirTag to. Okay? The phone's gonna sense it, they're gonna process it, and anonymously, so to speak, they're gonna send that data na, oh, this AirTag serial number 2346789 was seen in BGC. 1 Bonifacio, no? Sabihin natin, sa location na yun. Okay, kasi nandun yung phone mo, within the distance, medyo, alam mo gano'ng kalayo yung AirTag, and with UH1 chips, no, meron pang directionality kung saan siya nanggagaling. So very accurately, all the phone in the world became a sensor for AirTags, and they could accurately report kung nasaan yung AirTag mo without GPS and mobile connectivity, which is good. And if you lose something na may AirTag within the city or an area na may iPhone, you would be able to find it. Of course, use case is paano pag nawala sa gubat, hindi enough yung signal to transmit to a nearby iPhone, or baka may nag-hike na may iPhone, then lucky day for you. But if not, naman, nawala yung susi mo, may AirTag sa gubat, then, well, you're out of luck kasi walang connectivity yun. But that's small use cases na hindi nila sinasolve, no? But just imagine, diba? Small device with 2 years worth of battery operated by yung typical button battery natin. And sad to speak, though, it's also being used to stock. Kasi nga, madali mong iwan somewhere. It's very cheap, 1.5, and you could track someone, diba, if nilagay mo sa bag, wherever they are. But again, in credit to Apple, no, they have some anti-stalking feature, like if hindi nakita yung master device ng AirTag for X number of hours, magbi-beep siya, may buzzer. Although you could find sa YouTube paano i-disable yung buzzer, no? So to speak. And if you have an iPhone, they would know, yung iPhone mo, na may AirTag na sumusunod sa'yo. Kasi lagi mo nakikita yon sa kasi again, your phone is a sensor. You are seeing that AirTag following you around without that AirTag's master device. So yeah, ideally you could find it now. But yeah, some issues with that. So again, edge computing scalability, if you have it, you could do it. And yung scalability with cloud computing, that's gonna be more of horizontal. Pag-instantiate ka na marami instance to be able to have capacity, computing power to process all the data you need. For reliability, well, with edge computing, no, failover management is crucial. Yung mga batteries, yung power, you have to take that into consideration. So that's the responsibility of yung team na nag-deploy no, and manage that. So cloud computing, at least on the shared responsibility model, no, it is on the presence and responsibility of uh, the cloud provider. Yung that said, no, we did have experienced cloud outages, no, from Microsoft to Google to AWS. We did have some instances of outages. So, but di ba, minsan yung mga anti-cloud guys, oh, alam mo si AWS nag-outage, si Microsoft nag-outage, so free work, free cut lahat ng nasa office na reliant on the cloud. And tatawanan nila yon. Kung naka-on-prem yan, hindi mangyayari yan. But do know, di ba? Okay, nagkaroon ng outage na sandali si Microsoft. Yung on-prem mo, pag brown out, kaya mo ba i-power lahat yan? Yung on-prem mo, pag nagkaroon ng problem si fiber optic connection mo, no, na ISP, diba? Meron ka bang redundant system that could do it? Paano kung isang poste lang pinanggalingan, tapos may truck na dumaan, tapos sumabit lahat ng fiber mo? How could you now have that system up? No? So, marami kang pinaproblema, but of course, pupunterihin natin yung kung ano yung minor na kinks na nangyari, tapos, mo, hindi 100% reliable yung cloud. Ganun sabihin na. So, again, they are solving different problems, and if you have hybrid solutions like in public and private cloud, then you could survive that, but that's gonna be expensive. No? So, it depends on your risk appetite on, diba? Kaya mo ba magka-outage ng konti and still continue, or talagang dapat 100%, no? Depends. And with that, meron namang what we call availability zones within cloud computing that I could have a replicated infrastructure. Let's say one is in Singapore, another would be somewhere in Europe. No, high latency in Europe, but it's far away across the globe. Na pag binagyo, let's say yung area natin dito, nagkaroon talaga ng massive outage, data natin is safe on the other side of the globe. No, so depends. Again, we need to take that into consideration. And for security, we've been discussing a lot of this, and apologies, I'm mainly a security guy doing cloud. But yeah, for edge computing, yung mga devices natin now has to be secure kasi that data is processing information and connecting to our cloud back-end cloud computing environment. No? So it could be stolen if a threat actor got one of your edge computing node as hindi mo properly secured. Diba, they could load a malicious firmware para kontrolin yon, or they could mangle yung data na tinatransmit papunta sa'yo para ibang information nakikita mo as what's actually happening on the ground. Another would be sa cloud though. Inherently, as mentioned, no, more secure to because a lot of the component is handled by yung vendor ng cloud. Okay, but again, keep in mind, there is a shared responsibility model where some components, even major components, are handled supposedly and should be protected by the users. No? So it's mainly yung unfamiliarity ng users on the cloud computing environment that makes it hard to secure. And may mga instructors kami sa security that handles cloud security na friends ko that they're always pulling their hair, no? Kasi every 3 months they would need to update their slides and tutorials because diba, ang daming features na nire-release ng mga cloud provider even weekly, no? And yung mga UIs, minsan nandito yung button, bukas nandito na sa baba. So yung slides mo hindi na accurate, no? Hence, there's a lot of notion then if you're medyo intermediate to advanced cloud engineer, no? You want command line environment para medyo seamless. Hindi mas seamless, para uniform, no, on how to do it. But even then, the API also gets updated. No? So you need to always keep yourself updated on what's the new features, what's the new security implications ng mga ganitong configuration that you need to be aware of. That's the end of it. Guess Q&A?
Yeah. So from Carlos Saul Perez, are the cloud providers AWS, GCP, or Azure providing edge services?
Depends on the cloud. So let's say if you go to Akamai, tas CDNs yung sinubscribe mo sa kanila, they would provide edge services, but medyo transparent na sa'yo. No? Since, let's say, gusto ko mag-distribute ng 10 gig na software update sa mga systems ko across the globe na dinevelop ko, diba? And I subscribe to Akamai. Just upload it sa Akamai platform. They would be the one populating yung mga servers nila para doon kukunin ng mga clients, no? But if you go with Apple Cloud, no, to a degree, meron din cloud si Apple. You're technically part of their network if you have an iPhone. Same with Google. So ano medyo broad, but they are offering it. They're not giving you a hardware. Sometimes you would need to acquire a hardware, design a hardware, develop it, and then use the cloud for, again, central processing for some data or even just telemetry. So I'm not sure if that answers it. Kasi hindi ka pwedeng kay Amazon na kay AWS. Okay, gusto ko ng cloud, gusto ko din ng edge. So pwede ba ako bumiling 10 edge computing node? I would say punta ka sa Amazon shop, bili ka ng mga Raspberry Pi. So I guess end si Amazon pa rin yung may sagot. But you have to configure and use it, no? To use it.
Okay,
salamat daw. Okay, thank you po, Sir Rinaldo.
From Gaudencio Calanga Jr. Can you give a brief or short information pertaining on the security aspects that once an on-premise data got infected with the virus, it will not migrate or sync to the cloud and vice versa?
Actually, ang problem dun is it would sync. No, it's up to the user to figure out if tainted yung data mo or hindi, and that's a very hard problem to deal with, no? Kasi we've seen attacks na hindi inattack yung infrastructure, inattack yung application, tapos naglagay siya ng, let's say, an admin account. It's gonna be an entry lang sa database. How would the cloud provider know na that's a malicious admin? They won't. The moment na mag-sync yun, then meron na siyang access sa cloud. That's an issue. Or in regards to Azure AD, no? We've seen organizations na meron silang Azure AD, meron din silang on-prem na Active Directory. And if the threat actor, may na-fish na user somewhere, no, na access nila si Azure AD with nag-insert sa admin account, the moment this Azure AD sync dun sa on-prem na Active Directory, they would have credentials na on this on-prem network. So but if you're thinking, let's say maybe a malware, no, may na-infect dito tapos nag-try mag-sync ng data, some cloud storage provider would have antivirus scan by default na it could work kung masyadong vanilla virus yung ginawa. You would detect it. Let's say Dropbox, no, mag-upload ka ng exe or antivirus na, it's gonna scan it, and it's a cloud service. Or even Microsoft, no, and Google, no, if mag-attach ka ng exe, binabawal nga nila yun. And that said, if it's a malware, we've seen malware na zinizip nila yung executable or malicious Word document, tapos i-email nila with the password yung zip. So it's not gonna get scanned. Kasi if it's standard compression lang, may mga cloud provider that could decompress it and scan yung decompressed document or executable. But what we saw was, kino-compress nila to with a password, tapos ini-email nila sa user, tapos nasa email din yung password. Now, some systems, of course, do not know na the password is within that email pwede nilang gamitin. No? But if yung tao nakabasa nun, they would be able to double-click that attachment, may password yun siya, tapos pagtingin na sa email, ito yung password nung in-expect kong document na hindi pala. Enter the password kasi tao ka, diba? Open the Word document, then you get infected. So it could still sync depending on the bypass or evasive techniques na gagamitin ng user. Now, that said, on that scenario, some vendors scan the email to check for strings, tapos gagamitin niya as test password to extract that compressed document. No? So yung arms race was na-realize ng mga malware authors yun. So they would say na, okay, hindi ko nagagawing text kasi madali lang yun. So they now put the password in an image na embedded sa email. So ngayon, papahirapan mo yung mga scanning solution kasi they have to do OCRs to get that string and use it as a test password, no? Baka mabuksan nila. And to some degree, naging arms race nga, yung mga scanning solutions, nag-OCR na ng image to look for the password. And what the threat actors now is doing is parang captcha na yung password. May mga weird characters na, pero yung image pa rin. So, para-paraan yan para makatagos sa mga scanning solutions. So, yeah, it could sync, depends on the evasion technique, but yung mga basic uh, sending o syncing ng malware, most of them would be would be caught if merong scanning solutions on either the on-prem or the cloud part.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mon. From Neri Gary Kakatian, can an edge computing setup be an on-prem solution?
Yes, it could be one of the use case. I'm not sure though what you mean kasi pag edge computing usually near the device, no? Or near the data nag-generate or nandun mismo sa data na yun. So yeah, short answer is it could be an on-prem, but if you're thinking na may edge computing sensors and compute nodes ako and it's reporting do sa central server para hindi na cloud, it could be done. Kasi cloud again, it's just an IP address and a computer owned by someone else. So you could set up that on your own.
From John Paul Paga, Sermon, how can public cloud address with data residency or sovereignty?
Tricky topic, Sir John Paul. No? So, yeah, that's gonna be an issue if you have a data sovereignty requirement na ito medyo weird, no? Parang on a few years back, no, I saw AWS binibida nila na si Monetary Authority of Singapore, para central bank nila is using actually yung AWS and allowing banks to use AWS as their core banking or processing. No? So, what they don't say is they are allowing that. They could allow that kasi may data center si AWS sa Singapore. Diba? Walang data center si AWS sa Philippines. So, if we're gonna say with notion na we have data sovereignty compliance requirement that data has to be processed here, then it won't fit, no? But we have to lax our law kasi we're not sure if AWS even gonna set up a data center here para for those specific requirement, or even if we are that big of a client para mag-set up sila ng data center here. Now that said, meron silang mga technologies in place like lease line to AWS diretso. So magsusubscribe ka. It's not gonna pass through typical VPN or internet line, no? Meron kang direct fiber na supposedly direct fiber. That's how they're advising. Direct to AWS node, no? Na supposedly more secure than standard VPN and lease line. So they have that. And one thing to consider, no? Let's say we got Smart and Globe as our big telco players here in the Philippines. Very minimal yung kanilang routing in between them that's happening in the country. No? So if you are in Globe and you want to talk to a smart network, your data would have to go out anyway, right? And come back to the Philippines. So, well, and that's it. Parang paano na yung data sovereignty issue? You could argue that that data is encrypted in transit, okay? But what if you're using Cloudflare? As mentioned, Cloudflare is a cloud WAF solution. Your data comes into Cloudflare. Cloudflare needs to decrypt it, so it's plain text. But Cloudflare needs that to determine if that is an attack traffic or not before sending it back to the backend server sa Philippines. So, again, yun yung mga questions na ayaw na nating isipin, no? Or hindi iniisip ng mga regulators natin na when they say na dapat yung data sovereignty natin sa Pilipinas lang. Lumalabas yung data natin because walang interconnectivity between telco that could handle that data properly, and diba, may mga WAF solutions that would be cloud only that would perform that kind of decryption for analysis.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mod. Another question from Rinaldo de Guzman. Can't we solve the issue of detection of devices in remote places with more satellites?
I'm not sure, sir, kung anong devices you are...
Yata yung pinabanggit mo kaya, Sir Mon, na kapag nawala sa gubat.
Well, due to low energy cannot, as of now, no, they cannot hit the satellite range. But that said, no, may mga test si Apple, at least sa iPhone 14 Pro Max, I'm not sure if you see the commercial na on some region, may mga satellite sila noon na pwede kang mag-submit ng SOS message kung meron kang rescue requirement. Kasi may satellite connectivity yung phone. Pero hindi siya full voice and video. It's what they did kasi latency tsaka very minimal yung bitrate na pwede, no? Very specific yung mga messages na pwede mo ipadala and maybe location ng GPS kung nasaan ka. No, so at least that's gonna be helpful for catastrophic events na nawala ka sa disyerto, sa gubat, pero meron kang access sa phone na may battery pa at that time, hopefully. No, you could submit your request for rescue using satellite. No, but imagine that product na sobrang mahal kasi iPhone 14 Pro Max lang yun. Konting tao lang din yung may access pa for now. But eventually, that technology would trickle down maybe 5, 10 years down the line. Tapos, mas tataas na yung bitrate soon kung maraming subscribers. And even then, iba yung bayad mo dun sa sa satellite rescue. I forget ko anong tawag dun eh. But yung satellite communication component ni Apple. And they're using it, I think, they're betaing, they have beta deployment sa North America pa lang. Okay? But of course, gusto nila worldwide soon, but doon sila syempre muna sa may afford syempre ng iPhone 14 Pro Max fully paid, no? Or and marami gumagamit. Anyway.
Okay. Ito sir, from Samuel Batao, is it possible to make my own cloud? What machine or equipment I needed?
Okay. If you want to test cloud, typically need good storage. Well, now, typical na yung 1 terabyte na this no, medyo affordable na siya this day and age. Memory is a good requirement. Siguro 16, pwede mo nang pagtsagaan ng mga micro instances. 16 gig na RAM, but 32 gig should be doable for home setup. Try to download VMware ESXi or Citrix. No? Meron silang cloud platform na yun yung i-install mo sa base OS and then they'll give you a web UI or client na you could connect to it and then you could instantiate yung mga instances mo. So, pwede kang maglagay ng mga images mo for Linux, for Windows, and depending on your requirement, gusto mo, of course, you can say 100 machines instantiate mo kasi limited resource mo. And depending on your licensing sang ESXi or Citrix, you could cluster yung mga box mo. No? If you have a lot of boxes in your home, sabihin natin. But do note, no? Iinit yun, so kailangan mo ng aircon, matataas yung kuryente mo, mahal yung hardware cost, but you could experiment it if you want it. Citrix is life.
Okay, so Sir Mon from Benjamin Alabadan. Sir Raymond, if cloud users may opt for either private cloud, public cloud, or hybrid cloud computing, what are the institutions who could opt for the usage of hybrid cloud and edge computing platforms? Or is there such a term or setup as that? Hybrid cloud or edge computing?
Yeah, may hybrid cloud, but I would say talk to your AWS provider. Kasi usually may mga local companies naman like maybe yung previous speaker kanina, no? Or may mga iba pa, Cascadeo and ganyan na. They could assist you on how to deploy, no? Or they could even tell you kung tama ba yung ginagawa mo or mapapamahal ka lang on your specific use case. So there are solutions providers that could help you out with that. Again, they have to know yung use case mo muna before they would be able to recommend yung proper solutions. But yeah, for hybrid cloud, I mean, if you set up a Citrix sa office mo or VMware ESXi tapos meron kang AWS and those two servers na in-instantiate mo on AWS and Citrix nagsisync, that's technically a hybrid cloud na on the basic definition. So again, it's gonna be dependent on your use case.
From Michael Bantillo, cryptocurrency and edge or cloud computing can be related or associate.
I like the way you're thinking, no, sir. Kung malaki yung processing power mo, tapos hindi naman ginagamit, pwede ka mag-mine. Ito, degree. You could, I'm not sure about cryptocurrency currency. We've seen malware infecting phones. No? And using yung processing power ng phones which is surprisingly good to mine cryptocurrency. So if you relate phones to as an edge computing device, then that's it. So typical noon would be pag laging umiinit yung phone mo, tapos mabilis mag-drain yung battery mo, tapos medyo bago pa. That could be an indicator of a crypto coin miner running on the background. And of course, hindi ko yung kumikita. May ibang taong kumikita sa processing power and battery life ng phone mo. And it tends to, of course, bring yung lifespan ng device down. Kasi lagi mainit, no? And hindi naman siya designed to operate at full capacity. So, yeah. On some degree, I've seen those malware na pag alam nilang gagamitin na ng user yung phone, magda-die down yung processing. Okay, para ibigay sa'yo yung compute node. Naisip mo mainit pero responsive naman yung phone mo. Pero the moment na mag-sleep yung phone, sisipa ulit yung mining. Or may isang maganda feature ako nakita doon sa isang malware. Aandar lang siya pag naka-charge. Which is typically pag gabi, iniwan mo, di ba? So, igising ka ng umaga, pang init ng telepono. Pero fully charged ka. So, may nag-mine na in behalf of your edge computing device.
Okay. Last question from Brian Casanos. How about the next cloud po, sir? Okay lang po ba gamitin? Any recommendation on the cloud storage po? Salamat.
With cloud storage, depending on your requirement, no? Not too familiar with Nextcloud, no? But let's say if you want a Dropbox equivalent na controlled mo, merong own cloud. Meron na rin siyang app, meron siyang application, tas you could host your server. So that could be a good Dropbox replacement na within your control. But do note, diba, yung accessibility no, yung latency no, across the globe, that's gonna be on you. You have to maintain it. But for storage, additional storage, no, if you have Microsoft, no, meron naman SharePoint. If you have Google, you have G Drive with a lot of storage requirement, capacity. It depends on your use case kung ano din itatago mo dun.